Welcome to Keeping Up College Football, episode number 4. And this will be a jam-packed show. Week 0 is finally under a week away, so we can look at some actual games. We can look at week 0. There's lots of great G6 games, a couple Power 4 games, although they are really not that special. But last episode, we looked at the Big Ten and the SEC tier list. Now we're going to do that with the Big 12 and the ACC. And what I'll tell you is both these conferences have a lot of teams in the middle that if everything goes right, they could be very interesting. And I really wanted to dig into that. But then as you look around the country, quarterback battles and position battles are finally starting to get figured out. Keelan Russell is now the starter at Alabama, but there's tons of quarterback battles still wide open. We're going to take a look at some of them. I'm going to predict who I think will end up starting for those teams. And then we'll finish it off. I've previewed and predicted every single game in all of college football. You can find that on short form content, literally every team in college football. So we're going to put them into the playoffs, the teams that I think will end up making the playoffs, and then we will predict the entire bracket. Starting off with the week 0 games. TCU, UNC, NC State, Virginia, UNLV, Memphis, NDSU, Jack State, Hawaii, and Stanford, in my opinion, are really the week 0 games that matters. New Mexico State versus Florida State's terrible. San Jose State versus USC, who cares? We know who will win those games. But these games are legitimately interesting, especially the G6 ones. But we'll start off with TCU and UNC. Bill Belichick has a team that needs to get off to a hot start. There is so much momentum pushing against them right now. But the reality is when you look at the coaching staff, they've all had success, no matter it be the NFL or college football. They just need to put it together at North Carolina. Compare that to TCU, who's coming off a year that wasn't amazing in 2025, but Sonny Dykes is still probably a top 3 coach right now in the Big 12. He's one of the most successful on paper in terms of a resume, and he's got a roster. The TCU defensive line is full of legitimate talent. When you look at guys like Jaden Craig, they should be incredibly explosive. Right now, I think the line's like 7.5. I would not be shocked if it looks eerily similar to how last year's TCU versus North Carolina game went, because I think TCU is just so much more talented than North Carolina is, and I think the coaching staff right now is more well prepared for the college game. Next, NC State, Virginia. This game will come down to quarterback play. Point blank, period. NC State and CJ Bailey is really a wild card to me, because if they would have kept a guy like Isaac Brown, right, you'd have a stronger run game. Defense is fine, but it still looks like a defense that will lead you to 8-4. But if you had a little bit more explosive power on offense, I really believe that you would beat Virginia, and it really wouldn't be all that close. And then for Virginia, you're coming off a year where you won tons of one-score games. Chandler Morris is now gone. Bo Pribula is the starter. I'm not a big Bo Pribula guy. I don't think he'll be all that good. With that being said, they return quite a bit, especially defensively, and the defense was very strong a year ago. So kind of what will give in this game. What I think will end up give is quarterback play. I think these two teams are incredibly evenly matched in terms of how well can you run the ball, in terms of how great are your skill position players. I don't think any of them have game breakers on the outside, but they're not like terrible either. And then defensively, I think they're incredibly similar. So it's going to come down to quarterback play. And I think CJ Bailey will just outplay Bo Pribula. When you look at how Bo Pribula played, particularly during the second half of that season against Missouri when they stopped playing Arkansas Pine Bluff and started playing SEC competition, he didn't look good. And NC State is not an SEC level defense by any means, but Bo Pribula also cannot hand the ball off to Ahmad Hardy either. I think NC State will win that game. If I had to guess, I think it would be fairly handily. We're not talking blowout fashion. We're talking like 10 to 14 points. UNLV in Memphis is the game of the weekend. People do not understand in August, that this game has legitimate playoff implications. I think Memphis is the best team in the American. I think UNLV is the best team in the Pac-12. So what does that mean? In a world where the G6 gets a playoff spot, this game has massive playoff implications. This game feels the way a BCS game would feel, because the winner has an inside track to the national title conversation, as crazy as that sounds. And the loser, your season's not over, but it's certainly going to be an uphill battle for Memphis. Quarterback situation looks really good. Charles Huff is a dude at coach. He's one of the best in the G6 right now. He's won everywhere he's ever been at. And Silverfield wasn't great at Memphis. There's this misconception that like he did anything remarkable at Memphis. He took a 8 to 10 win program and he kept him 8 to 10. I think Charles Huff has an opportunity to transcend that. The running game looks incredibly solid. The defense looks really good. But then for UNLV, what's the quarterback play going to look like? Dan Mullen is a quarterback guru, but we're sitting here 6 days away from kickoff, and we don't know if Jackson Arnold or Alex Orji is going to start. And those are two pretty sexy names, but can they go out on the field and be successful? The UNLV wide receivers are elite. There's a couple guys there that I would not be shocked if they end up in the NFL. And then the running game should be really, really solid. But what could be a competitive advantage big time for Memphis, UNLV cannot stop the run. And it's going to be my biggest worry throughout this season for UNLV when you get teams like New Mexico and what Jason Eck builds, when you get teams like Air Force and Troy Calhoun, and you get teams like NDSU and Tim Polisic. Those are such physical teams up front. Memphis is not necessarily as physical as those teams will be, but if Memphis can run the ball, it will make whoever starts at quarterback, whether it's Aaron Nolan, Marcus Stokes, whoever, it will make their job so much easier. With that being said, I think UNLV has too much offensive talent. I think there will be too much explosive firepower for the Rebels, and I think that will end up being the X factor that ends up giving them the win. Next, NDSU and Jacksonville State. NDSU's first game in the FBS. Jacksonville State's coming off of a year where you made it to the conference championship game. You had one of the best running backs in college football. But that's a big question for Jacksonville State. Cam Cook is gone. And it's one thing when you lose a good player. It's a whole other thing when you lose a great player. Cam Cook, to all accounts, was a great player. This is a team that, if I'm not mistaken, they ran the ball 68% of the time on offensive snaps. Was the most in the country. You have talent at wide receiver. One of the wide receivers is like 6'8". He's a physical specimen. But can he run good routes? NDSU will take somebody away offensively. How good can Jacksonville State run the ball? Because NDSU has a defensive line that I think will be one of the best that they've had in some time. It is very, very talented. You have guys like Donovan Woolen and Darius Giddens that provide really strong run support, but they're also good at defending the pass. And then Jacksonville State defensively, can you match the physicality of the North Dakota State Bison? Can you win at the line of scrimmage? It is what this game will come down to, because Jacksonville State wants to run the ball. This is not, and a lot of NDSU fans love to talk about it, this is not a 2015 Jacksonville State team. And it's not a 2015 NDSU team. NDSU's not trotting out there with Carson Wentz and Johnny Crockett. It's not that team. But they're still pretty solid, and I don't think Jacksonville State has what it takes on the defensive line to stop the run game consistently, because if you can run the ball, NDSU will not have a problem. If NDSU can run the ball, they will not have a problem. I don't think Jacksonville State has what it takes on the defensive line. And then on the offensive line, can you create the running lanes that Cam Cook had last year? And then you have a guy that's 75 to 80% of what Cam Cook was. You don't have Cam Cook. I'll tell you that man to man. But you have somebody that's mildly competitive. They might, but I don't think it'll be good enough. The Fargo should be rocking. I think the Bison end up winning. And then Hawaii-Stanford. Very tricky game. Stanford is not good. Davis Warren's going to be trotted out as the quarterback. There's not much to look forward to for Stanford. And for Hawaii, the offense is incredibly talented. One of the best. They are a lot like Texas State in the Pac-12. And that's a very niche reference, but if you follow the G6 closely, you'll understand. Great quarterback play. Offensive-minded coaches. Both teams have defenses that are solid. I think Hawaii's defense is probably a little bit better. I just think right now they have more talent than Stanford. I think this is a game where Hawaii will line up and just play football, and they'll be better. I think they have stronger quarterback play. If Stanford can't throw the ball, and people forget, Davis Warren was awful at Michigan. And Michigan had one of the best run games in the country. Stanford is not trotting out one of the best running games in the country. That's your football game. I think Hawaii wins, and if Hawaii wants to make the college football playoffs, you have to win this game. Even if you go undefeated, win the Mountain West, yada, 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 this is a must-win game for you because Stanford will not be seen as a quality opponent. But let me know what you guys think of the Week 0 games. Final year of Week 0, which is very interesting. Let me know your thoughts on that as well. But next, the Big 12 tier list. The Big 12 is a conference that back in the day, there seemingly was 7 teams that could win the conference year in, year out, and they alternated constantly. I mean, you could be the worst team in the Big 12 one year, and then the next year you legitimately could win the conference. ASU even did that a couple seasons ago, but now it looks like the cream has certainly risen to the top of the Big 12. Texas Tech and the 2 Utah schools just look better than everybody else. I put Texas Tech in a tier above everybody else because I think they earned that. Last season, when people like me stopped talking and we played football, Texas Tech was the best team in the Big 12. It wasn't all that close. You're returning guys like Dickey, the defensive line, still elite. Joey McGuire is still spending multi millions of dollars on his roster. I think they're still the best team in the Big 12, especially if Will Hammond's healthy. If he's not healthy, we'll see. If Tommy Castellanos comes in and plays, I mean, God knows what could happen with that, but that's a can of worms I don't really want to open right now. But for that next group, I think it's BYU and I think it's Utah. If I had to preface, I think BYU is a little bit better than Utah. At least they're a little bit more proven. Utah lost a lot on the offensive line, and they lost a handful of very good defensive players. I think the culture's still there. I think Morgan Scaley is going to be one of the more underrated coaches right now in college football. There's a lot of people that are acting like he's terrible. He's not. I think Utah will be cleanly in that second tier of the Big 12, but neither of these schools touch Texas Tech. And then this is the biggest tier in the Big 12. If everything goes right, you can win the conference and you can make the college football playoffs. Like in all honesty, starting off with TCU, I think Jaden Craig is one of the top 3 quarterbacks in this conference. I don't know if he's 2 or 3. Sonny Dykes is a coach that continues to get the most out of his rosters, and TCU is probably one of the best defensive lines in the Big 12. Is it comparable to Texas Tech? No, but it's comparable to literally every other defensive line in that conference. If you can get good enough cornerback play, if you can replace guys like McAllister, because he was so good, but like was 2 and 3 that good? Not really. I think the wide receiver room as a whole could be deeper this year, and I think that could end up catapulting them into a very interesting conversation. And when TCU is good, it seems like they're like Auburn. When they're good, it's just Miracle City, and they end up in games they probably shouldn't be in. Then Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State should be viewed as an old Big 12 team. They are going to score 50 points. They might lose. They're going to score 50 points. The Eric Morris offense is one of the best schemes in the country. When you look at the running back talent, when you look at the wide receivers, you obviously have Metzmaker. I have no questions about that offense. The defense, I could not have more questions about. Yes, there's talent. Yes, there's guys that individually play well. Eric Morris's defense a year ago sucked. Oklahoma State's defense a year ago sucked. They're not going to win 1 or 2 games. They're going to win a lot more than that. But I do think there are reasons to be concerned defensively. Houston, win 1-score games. And that's kind of the weird thing about Houston. I don't know. Connor Wigman's fine. Will Fritz is a good coach. There's nothing that I look at and I'm like, that guy is David Bailey. Not really. But if everything goes right, you win your 1-score games. You get Texas Tech in a sneaky week. I think it's week 2 or week 3, if I'm not mistaken. You win that game. You get hot. You survive. If people told me they ended up in the Big 12 title, Utah turns to fall off a cliff, they play Arizona and they win it, I'm surprised. I think Texas Tech would have had to play very poorly, but it's not the end of the world. And they're just a team. They stay in games. They're well coached. That is a situation that could put you near a Big 12 title. Arizona, really, I'm betting that Brent Brennan is still a good coach, and Noah Fafita can take the next step. He's a quarterback that continues to be on the verge of greatness. Can he finally do something truly great, and can he get the most out of a wide receiver core that is not as good as when he first arrived at Arizona with guys like, Tet? And then defensively, Arizona should be really solid. Once again, do they have a Texas Tech level talent defense? My God, no. But very similar to TCU in a lot of ways, I think the scheme could be pretty good. I think they could play good complementary football, and they could just end up winning games. But for your rival, on the other hand, ASU needs to put up points and put up points in a hurry. Kenny Dillingham is a quarterback whisperer. I think Connor Boyle is not that talented. I think of him a lot of the same way I think of Bo Perbula. But the wide receiver talent is there. The transfer portal class was really good, and you lose Sam Levitt. Sucks. but skill positions are really, really good. Defensively, you want to talk about an underrated defensive line? I think they could be very solid. And then, I mean, if you can win one-score games, it's what this entire category comes down to. Some of these teams, and if everything goes right, might be 6-6, and others might be 9-3, and it might be down to 4 plays that happen on FS1 at 8:30 at night. Don't turn the ball over. That's also been a Cutter Boyle problem at times. But it's really get the most out of your quarterback play, and everything else should fall in line, and then make a handful of plays, and that's how you'd end up 10-2, 11-1. But you also have a game against Texas A&M, going to College Station and shock the world, and I think a lot of people would think of the Big 12 very differently. And finally, in this tier, Kansas State. Avery Johnson is a guy who I don't think has ever fully maximized his talent, at least not yet. Colin Klein is a quarterback mastermind. My question is, how do you replace Chase Brown? Who's that running back that's really, really solid? And then when Kansas State's at their best, they have an offensive line that's beautiful. You have guys like Cooper Beebe. Where are they? I don't think they're on the roster right now. And then defensively, guys like Felix, I don't see them. I don't see an elite level safety. If everything goes right and Avery Johnson looks really good and he can kind of make up for some mistakes, particularly early in the season where you have that very easy schedule, if you can just take care of business there and then believe, that's kind of where it's like if everything goes right, you start, 5 or 6-0 if I'm not mistaken. Don't remember the schedule completely off the top of my head. And then you just keep chugging. You find ways to win one-score games, very similar to how you did when you won the Big 12 title a couple of years ago, excuse me. You find ways to win one-score games, and then you beat that Max Duggan TCU team. I think it would look very similar, except you'd have significantly better quarterback play. Avery Johnson has to be good, like very good, if you want to be near the top of the Big 12. Next, the not great category. West Virginia, Colorado, UCF. We'll go through some of these teams a little bit quicker. West Virginia has so much transfer portal talent, and people are like, well, Cam Cook's great. I agree. Malik Hawkins should be fine. I agree with a lot of these things. When you have so many new players, you're going to hit on some, you're going to miss on some. West Virginia, if they want to be at the top of the Big 12, they need to hit on 75% of those guys. I don't think that's going to happen. Colorado, I love the go-go offense. I think they're going to upset a team inside of, if everything goes right, or maybe even one of the top 2 tiers. They're too small, week in, week out. I don't love the defense. Dion still runs a little bit too much of a hype machine, although that's certainly died down. And then, the quarterback situation, I don't hate, but I don't love either. I just don't think it's a remarkably talented team. I think with the way the offense plays, they're going to maybe surprise a couple people. They are very quick. They're also very small. They'll win some games, but it won't be beautiful. UCF, Alonzo Barnett, I like. Scott Frost, he's kind of fallen out of favor for me. I don't see this as a year where they take that next step by really any means. Fine roster, but nothing that just pops off the page. Like, USF's going to do something this year. Okay, and then finally, just the bad teams. Baylor, the Dave Aranda experiment since the Big 12 title game has been a disaster. It's been a very open disaster. DJ Legway is a very solid player. It's not enough right now. It's not enough. For Cincinnati, Scott Satterfield started off blazing a year ago. Lost damn near every game in the second half of the season. No, they're not going to bounce back. You lose your quarterback. You lost so much. Cincinnati's not going to be good next year. Who knows? You might hire Luke Fickell back. Then you have Kansas. Since College Game Day went there with Lance Leipold, it's just not been the same. He never took that next step. And now with Jaden Daniels gone, you have guys like Dylan Edwards in town, which maybe if you can finally get the most out of what was a very highly rated recruit out of Derby, Kansas, maybe. But you'd have to put it all together. You'd have to beat teams consistently that are significantly more talented than you. When I look at the non-conference, I see a team like Missouri, and I'm like, well, Missouri's probably going to beat you, and then you're going to head into Big 12 play already kind of demoralized. I don't love it. And then for Iowa State, your roster just got gutted. Jimmy Rogers is a fine hire. He's never really had to rebuild a program too much. I mean, he was at Washington State for a year. He was at SDSU for 2 years. SDSU, he had literally the best teams in program history. He won a national title, and then next year he lost with much of that same team returning. And then he went to Washington State, played in a lot of games very competitively in the fourth quarter with teams that were significantly better than them, but then would kind of inexcusably lose games that Washington probably should have won. It's not a bad hire. It won't be a disaster, but I don't love it. But let me know what you guys think of my Big 12 title or my Big 12 tier list. I think it's pretty solid. I don't think there's too much debate really for the Big 12. Next, moving on, we are going to the ACC. We're going to take a look at where I'll put the ACC teams in terms of tiers. Starting off, very similar to the Big 12. Miami is the best team in the ACC. Point blank period. They have the most talented roster. They have the best coaching staff. They spend the most money. In best Group B, I think Louisville and SMU are truly the second and third best teams right now in this conference. I think they are better than Clemson. I think they are better than some people love the Florida State talent. They are the two best teams outside of Miami in this conference because I can go, the coaches have been really successful. The quarterback situation at SMU is really good. The running game's really good at Louisville, and both teams have very solid defenses, especially SMU. I got a lot of heat for putting them in my preseason top 5. Guys, they were a couple plays away against Cal from making it to an ACC title and maybe even making it all the way to the college football playoffs a year ago. So I don't think either of them really have that many questions. Then for the if everything goes right, who knows? Clemson, it's Dabo Swinney. The team's really talented. There will be so much said about what Dabo Swinney isn't and what he hasn't done in the portal or NIL era of college football. The reality is, he's the only coach in this conference to win a national championship. He's still, as of 2 years ago, won an ACC title. And there are tons of quarterback questions. The offensive line looks pitiful. The wide receiver room could be one of the best we've seen though in some time. But the offensive line looks pretty bad. But if the offensive line gets figured out, quarterback plays fine. You can run the ball. You got good wide receivers. You can win one-score games. You have a couple tough games against LSU and Miami, but everything else is not easy, but it's certainly pretty winnable. If everything goes right, you upset one of those two teams. I could see a world where you're in the ACC title, and Dabo really doesn't lose those very often. And then next I have Cal. JKS is a beast. I think Tosh is going to be really good. Adam Muhammad at running back's a stud. Defensively, they're going to have to play good as a unit. I think they will, though. And then another team, the schedule's not all that difficult. If you can beat who you're supposed to beat, you're going to play very important games late in the year. And I have just kind of this weird feeling that Cal could do something really special this year. That's why if everything goes right, who knows? Then Virginia Tech. James Franklin has won everywhere he's ever been. He's one of the most underrated coaches in college football. Can he beat top 5 teams? No. I would love for people to tell me how many top 10 teams there are in the ACC. Because I see one, and I see in that one team hates beating teams that they're better than. So I think Virginia Tech is in a great situation. How great is Grunkmeyer? I don't know. I don't really care. James Franklin's their coach. The defense under Brent Pry will be really good. Brent Pry is a great defensive mind. Keeping him on the staff was a very intelligent idea from James Franklin. Shocker. I think they're going to win a lot of games, and if everything goes right, maybe you upset Miami. Miami likes losing at home late in the year. Maybe you end up near the college football playoffs. Georgia Tech and Brent Key, I just think they'll be really solid. Will they be great? No. How great's the quarterback situation going to be with Alberto Mendoza? I don't really know. You lose your offensive coordinator. There's enough that's telling me you're not taking the next step, but at the same time, you'll be a solid team, and if everything goes right, who knows? Then you get to the ACC, and this is where the most teams are. They're just solid. They're not bad. They have strengths. They have weaknesses. They find ways to win one-score games. NC State and Pitt, prime examples of that. Can they go beat Louisville or your top teams of the world? Maybe not Louisville year in, year out, but your top teams in the ACC? No. They will beat teams that they're better than. They will not lose randomly to Boston College. And then for Wake Forest, they were a 9-win team a season ago. A lot of people don't understand. They were a really, really good team. I think they take a slight step back. They've won some weird games. They beat Kennesaw 10-9. They beat SMU 13-12. Weird games. But I do think they'll be solid next year. Duke, guys, let's put some respect on Manny Diaz's name. That guy's coaching at a high level. He's getting every drop of talent out of what these Duke rosters have been. I'm going to continue to believe that he's going to at least put a fairly solid product on the field. And then for Virginia, you're coming off a year where you made it to the ACC title. I'm going to kind of give you the benefit of the doubt. at least in that you're not going to drop all the way back down to being really, really bad. I don't love Bo Prabula. The returning production is nice, but I don't think it's transcending. I'm not incredibly high, but like I respect Virginia. What they've built right now under this coaching administration has been really, really good. I put Florida State in their own tier because I don't think they're as bad as the bottom four, because the bottom four are like just terrible. But I don't think they're solid. To win 5 games at Florida State is not solid, and it's giving too many people too much credit. I do think the team will be fine, though. Duncan Robinson could be really, really good. How good is Ashton Daniels going to be? I don't really know. There's times where I'm like, this guy looks like a really athletic, gunslinging type quarterback, and then there's times where it's like, just sit on the bench. Defensively, can this team play as a unit, please, for the love of God? They have had talent. I mean, even the last 2 years that have looked awful, they've had talent. They just haven't put it together. They need to put it together. And then the bottom of the ACC is the worst bottom in all of college football. All these teams legitimately cannot win more than 4 games. Starting off with Boston College, Bill O'Brien's not turning that ship around. We talked about Stanford earlier in this episode. I mean, Davis Warren's your starter. Davis Warren's not good. North Carolina and Bill Belichick, who really knows? I see a world where they could end up being a solid team. I just don't think that's the world we live in. And then Syracuse, everyone wants to tell me, Steve Angeli's coming back. Steve Angeli's coming back. Brown's a good coach. I agree with that. Your guys' defense was the worst in the country a season ago. The worst. You gave 34 points to Boston College. That needs to get substantially better. I don't know if it gets substantially better, although it might at least get a little bit better. But let me know what you guys think about the ACC tier list in the comments below, because I think I did pretty well. There's a couple teams where I could see how you maybe argue a team like Syracuse that they could be a little bit better, but I think we are pretty close there. Next, there's a ton of quarterback battles in college football. Let's go through them. Let's predict who's going to win them, and then kind of talk about the talent that they're going to be working with. And we're going to start off with Florida. Tramel Jones, Aaron Filio, who ends up getting the start? Right now, I think it will be Aaron Filio because of the fact that he's coming over with an offensive coordinator. He's coming over with formally a couple weapons from that offense, particularly in the wide receiver room. I think he'll get the benefit of the doubt with the coaching staff. Tramel Jones looks like he'll be pretty solid. And then for these two quarterbacks, you don't have to be a star. What you have to be able to do is game manage and put the team in a situation to be successful. Jaden Baugh is an elite level running back. The wide receiver room at Florida is legitimately really, really good. You returned so much from a year ago. You bring in a guy like Eric Singleton, like, I don't have much question about that. You have a great offensive coordinator mind behind you. The defense returns like 6 or 7 starters. Should be pretty solid. John Summerall's a really good coach. The offensive line even looks pretty darn good. But you just need to make the right plays. I think Aaron Filio is going to be a little bit more game managey. He will not bring you to an SEC title or a national title, but he will be good enough. And at Florida in year 1 after the Billy Napier experiment, you just need to be good enough. You need to sit there, make consistently good reads, and provide the very talented players that Florida still has opportunities to be successful. I think he does that better than Tramel Jones does. But let me know who you guys think will win the Florida battle. Next, Tennessee. Faison Brandon, George McIntyre. To me, this is not even really a battle. When you pay a guy like Faison Brandon as much money as they paid him, the expectations that he has, guy's gonna play. A lot like Keelan Russell at Alabama that just got announced 2 days ago. He's gonna play. And when you look at how much returning production is around him, he's just got to be fine. He's got to make a handful of plays in the biggest moments, and that's how he's going to be judged. Will he make them? Only time will tell. But he's a really good athlete. The arm is incredible. I really like it. And for George McIntyre, if he ends up starting, I don't think it'd be that bad. At Florida, if Tramel Jones ends up starting, I think it could look eerily similar to what they've seen in the last handful of years, where it's very erratic quarterback play that sometimes looks great, sometimes looks bad. And my God, we love highly rated recruits. With George McIntyre, if he ends up playing, I think he'll be very solid. I just think he'll look very Joey Aguilar-y, maybe even a little bit worse. He won't necessarily make elite plays in the big moments. And like a year ago, Tennessee was in a shootout with a great Georgia defense. I don't know if George McIntyre can do that. I think Faison Brandon in his best game can do that. And when you play in the SEC at a program like Tennessee, as long as you are not literally throwing the games when you play teams like Mississippi State, you just need a quarterback that can sit there and can deliver passes against Alabama and Georgia and LSU and those type of teams, and at least try to give you an opportunity to win. I think Faison Brandon does that at a higher level. Moving on, Clemson's quarterback battle. Clemson's got a lot of question marks offensively at offensive line and at quarterback. Tate Reynolds really was not expected to truly compete for this race. He looks like, in my opinion, the better quarterback right now. Will he play? I don't know. And he's a freshman, but Dabo Swinney's did it before, and the guy's name was Trevor Lawrence, and it worked out pretty well for the both of them. They won one of those little titles behind Dabo Swinney. Would Tate Reynolds do that? Probably not. Playing the odds. But I do think he'd be solid. And the other thing with Vizian, I don't think he's all that good. And I don't think the downside in terms of, well, what happens if our quarterback play sucks? Well, if our quarterback play sucks, the offense can't move the ball. I don't think the running game is going to be elite. I don't think the offensive line is going to be elite. You need explosive level quarterback play. Dabo Swinney knows that when he's done at Clemson, the stadium will be freaking named after him. But what he also knows is that he's a guy who wants to compete at the highest level, and he wants to win. I think Tate Reynolds gives them the best opportunity to win. Can he game manage? God knows. Who knows? I don't really care right now. I want to see Clemson be able to play a team like Miami and play them competitively. I don't think anybody in that quarterback room other than Tate Reynolds can do that. I think he's going to start. I think he's going to be very, very solid. Will he be elite? No. But if he starts, I look at a game like Miami, I look at a game like Virginia Tech, two teams that I think are very comparable to you. Well, really Virginia Tech, Miami is significantly better than you. Tate Reynolds, maybe he makes 1 to 2 plays that keeps you in that game. It really wouldn't shock me. And finally, the Iowa quarterback battle is one that always interests me a lot, because it's like, if Iowa has good quarterback play, honestly, like they had a season ago, they're going to be a handful of plays away from the college football playoffs, like they were a season ago. Jeremy Hecklinski is looking like the guy right now. Hank Brown, I think it's because he was at Auburn, but he does not excite me in the slightest. And what I see with Jeremy Hecklinski is, like, if he can be a serviceable game manager in that offense and be able to check to good run plays, hit tight ends, and the biggest thing is occasionally throw the ball down the field and open the damn thing up. I think Iowa, with that defense and that run game, will have an opportunity with that schedule to be damn near 11-1, to maybe make the college football playoffs. With Hank Brown, I think you could very easily lose games to teams that you're significantly better than, because I think he could make a dumb read or two. And I think Jeremy Hecklinski won't play scared, but he'll play conservative. And when you have a team that's kind of built like Iowa's, with a schedule that Iowa's has, I think that just is more advantageous in my opinion. But I'm very curious what Iowa fans think and who they want to end up starting. But on to the best part of the college football season. My teams that I think will end up making the college football playoffs. We will start at the top. I have Indiana at number 1. Excuse me, no I don't. I have Texas at number 1. I have Texas at number 1. I have Notre Dame at number 2. I have Indiana at number 3. Texas Tech at number 4. I think those are 4 of the best rosters in America. What you also need to realize is Texas Tech has a very easy schedule, and Notre Dame has a very easy schedule, which just means they're going to win a lot of games and most likely end up in the top 4. I think Texas could be 11-1 and honestly be the number 1 team in the country. And for Indiana, I have them beating Ohio State and losing late in the season to Washington. I still think that puts them inside of the top 4. They've proven that they can beat good teams everybody gets upset once in a blue moon. That's why I think they end up at 3. Then at 5, I have Georgia. They'll be really, really good. I think they'll pick up a loss somewhere along the way that will look a little bit worse than Texas, and their strength of schedule is just not quite as nice. 6, I got Miami. And then 7, I have Oregon. Miami's schedule, I think they lose to Notre Dame. That puts them at 6. Oregon, I think, ends up losing to Ohio State. They have a pretty weak schedule as well, which I think will put them kind of where A&M was a year ago. It's really kind of what I base this off of is where was A&M put? They were put 7. I think Oregon could look very similar resume-wise to what A&M looked like a season ago. And then when you get to those pure kind of bubble teams, I have Ohio State sitting right there at 9, and I have Ole Miss sitting at 8. I think Ole Miss can be 10-2. I think they're going to win a game against LSU. I think they're going to win a game against Oklahoma. I think that's going to propel them to the playoffs. And then they're going to play an Ohio State team that, in my opinion, loses to Texas and loses to Indiana. And that is going to be probably most certainly the game of the first round, at least. And if I'm Texas in my bracket, or if I'm Texas Tech or Georgia, I don't want to play 8 or 9. They're going to be hot. They're going to have Trinidad Chambliss on one side. You're going to have Jeremiah Smith on the other. And they are going to be tough outs. And it's another reason why this playoff format is just so bad. Because Ohio State or Ole Miss should not be playing the number 1 team in the country next year in the first true kind of round of the playoffs, if you know what I mean. And then towards the real edge of the bubble, I have LSU. I think they'll end up 10-2. Beating Alabama is really what will get them in here. And then Louisville. Louisville is a very easy schedule. I'm very high on the quarterback play. I'm very high on the run game. I'm very high on the defense. I think 11-1 with a loss to Miami ends up getting you playing Miami. Will you actually be allowed to do that? I don't really know. I don't really care, to be honest with you. I'm predicting this in August. And then for my G6 team, I bounced between UNLV and Boise, but some of the latest intel about the UNLV quarterback situation, that there's not really a guy that's been named yet heading into a Memphis game, it worries me. I do think UNLV wins that game, but their inability to stop the run, I could see them losing to a New Mexico. I could see them losing to an NDSU. I could see them losing to an Air Force. I think that could prevent them. They've been my pick all offseason, but I'm going to switch it. I do think it will end up being Boise. And then for who's going to win in the first round of the playoffs, starting off at the top, Georgia, Boise State. It's Georgia. Boise State is very good, great G6 team. It's Georgia. Ole Miss, Ohio State. I think the difference in this game will be Ohio State's ability to get to the quarterback. And I don't think, with guys like Princewell leaving for LSU, I don't think that Ole Miss will be able to do that at a high enough level. It was Ohio State's Achilles heel a year ago. And when you have Arthur Smith in these type of games, the running game will be so dominant. I think Bo Jackson will play good, and I think Jeremiah Smith makes a handful of plays. Trinidad Chambliss had a tremendous playoffs a year ago. I think he'll still have a good playoffs if they end up making the playoffs, but I think Ohio State will nudge them out. Then Miami, Louisville. Miami wins. I don't think this game would be all that close. Miami realistically is probably, in my opinion, a top kind of 4 team in the country, just with the way the schedule plays out. You end up playing Notre Dame. I think you end up losing. It is what it is. You'll beat Louisville. And then Oregon, LSU. This would be an incredible game. 2 of the best tight ends in the country, by the way, on each of these teams. But what would be the difference? The congruency of the Oregon roster. You have an LSU team that will have had so much roster turnover from 2025 to 2026. I don't know how great their depth's going to be. LSU's going to have played a full SEC schedule. Oregon's would have played a weak schedule with a really, really deep and talented roster. I think they'll be more healthy. I think they'll be more ready. And I think Dan Lanning will end up kind of getting that. It's not a signature win when you win in the first round of the playoffs, but it's a very sizable win against a sexy logo. And I think that's kind of what he needs more than anything. Then heading into what is the quarterfinal, starting off with Texas Tech, Georgia. I think Georgia will end up beating Texas Tech in a very close and competitive game. I think it truly will be close. I just think Georgia will make one more play. I trust Kirby Smart more. And guys, the Dogs are going to be playing for some revenge. People want to say a lot of things about the way the last couple of years have gone for Kirby Smart. I think a lot of it's unfair. 1 year, Carson Beck gets injured. Gunnar Stockton comes and plays his first game. And then last year, team was beat up quite a bit. And quite frankly, Trinidad Chambliss just had a game. Sometimes the guy on the other side is just going to have a game. Trinidad Chandler's had a game. It is what it is. And then Texas-Ohio State will be another rematch. You'll see a handful of them throughout these playoffs. I think Texas gets it done again. I think the roster is so good. I think they're ready for the moment. And the biggest thing about Ohio State, same thing that's going to help them beat Ole Miss, their ability to protect Julian Sayin. When you have a guy like Colin Simmons coming off at the edge, I don't think you're protecting him. When you have to go up against the wide receiver talent that Texas is going to have, the running game that Texas is going to have, one of the best revitalized offensive lines in the country, I think Texas will end up winning. Then you have Indiana, Miami. This is where I think the Curt Cignetti fairy tale doesn't end, but reality strikes. Miami, when you just go guy for guy against Indiana talent-wise heading into next season, I think Miami wins. I think the quarterback play will be more consistent. I think the running game will be slightly better. I do think Indiana's offensive line might be a little bit better than Miami's, which is different than it was a season ago. I think the Miami defense is going to be ready to play. And I think Malachi Tony and Mark Fletcher are going to make a handful of plays on offense where they just flat out win the game. That's my hunch. I think Miami will beat Indiana, but once again, very competitively. And then in the game of you haven't did anything because you haven't won a national title, Marcus Freeman plays Dan Lanning, two of the best coaches in this sport. I think Dan Lanning will get the win. I think they will play Notre Dame, and what will be the difference? Notre Dame will not have played a game in 28 days. Truly, it will be a month. They don't play Conference Championship weekend. They don't play Army-Navy weekend. They don't play the first round of the playoffs. It will have been a full month, at least, if not maybe even a little more, since Notre Dame played. Oregon's going to be fresher. Oregon's going to be better. Oregon has enough talent to certainly kind of play with them in that regard. Oregon's going to win the football game, and it's because Notre Dame's not in a conference. And I don't mean that because, they didn't play tough enough schedule. I mean, they literally will be off for a month. That's why I think Oregon wins that game, point blank period. And then, who makes it to the national title? Georgia, Texas in one of the semifinals. Most likely, I think Texas does end up winning the SEC. That's how they end up getting the 1 seed. It is very hard to beat Kirby Smart twice. I think Georgia ends up winning. I think the difference is a Georgia defense that can neutralize the run game and make Arch Manning beat him by himself. And I think Georgia in round 2 will be the only team that will make him do that in the entire season. That's how much I respect the Texas run game heading into next year. And Kirby Smart's going to pull out a couple stops. He's going to do what great coaches do. And it's in big games, make 1 or 2 calls that ends up flipping the games. And then in the other one, Miami versus Oregon. Will Miami get back to the national title, or will Oregon finally get back to the national title for the first time in a long time? I went back and forth on this one big time, but I think Oregon's going to do it. With Dante Moore, he would have built up the confidence with a win against LSU. He would have built up the confidence with a win against Notre Dame. And you'd be sitting there, and he'd have some of the best wide receiver talent in the country, one of the most elite and reliable tight ends, an incredible defensive line for Oregon. If it's not now, I think it's truly never for the Ducks with just how much they return. I think they will end up in the national title against the Georgia Bulldogs. Big Ten SEC national title, Georgia, Oregon. Who wins it all? For Oregon, what do they have coming into this game that could be the reason why they win it? Well, you have Dan Lanning, who's a great coach. You have Dante Moore, who at this point would have won 3 consecutive big-time games. You have an incredibly elite wide receiver core. You have a good offensive line and a tremendous defensive line with one of the best secondaries in the country. And for Georgia, what do you have? You have probably the best coach since Nick Saban. And by probably, I mean most likely, unless you want to count Curt Cignetti, who, I mean, it's a toss-up. I don't really care. Nate Frazier is one of the better running backs in the country. And Gunnar Stockton at this point would be a guy that finds ways to win games. Is he Joe Burrow? No. But, is he Stetson Bennett? I think he is. I think he's very close. The tight end room for Georgia is really good as well. And then you return 8 starters on defense. Defense wins championships. So who do I have winning it all? The Georgia Bulldogs. I think Georgia will beat Oregon. I think the SEC will make it back to a national title and will win a national title. I think Kirby Smart will get number 3, which will elevate him to that next echelon of college football coaches. But I think you're going to also learn some other things this playoffs. You're going to learn that Oregon is a team that can win a national championship. I think Oregon will be on the doorstep of a national title. And just because you lose does not mean you can't do it. There's plenty of universities where Oregon would end up winning the game against Georgia. I think you're going to learn that Texas also can put themselves in a position to be very close to a national title. Some other things. Indiana will get they won't get humbled that much, but they will get a little welcome to reality. College football is not all sunshine and rainbows when Kurt Cignetti is your head coach. It's not. But they'll still be incredibly solid. And I think if this plays out how I think this will play out, I think there'll be a lot of questions around Marcus Freeman's job security, because that's just the way college football works nowadays. But more importantly, on the schedule of how this sport's laid out, because I think Notre Dame could easily beat Oregon if they are not off for an entire month. But that's just my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think of my entire playoff picture, my national championship thoughts, and really the way I kind of have Notre Dame playing into this, because Notre Dame is always a very hotly debated topic. But that is all for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you're still here, subscribe, leave likes. Let me know what you think of the entire episode. I really do hope y'all enjoyed. God bless and good night.